Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Off-Road Hub. My name is Ken, thanks for watching. Today I am here with my brother-in-law, Jason, and we're doing something a little different today. I don't have my FJ Cruiser, we're not doing a trail. What we're gonna do is install a lift on Jason's new 2020 Jeep Gladiator. It's overland trim. It's only got, I don't know how many miles are on it?
About 800.
800 miles, so nothing's rusted. Everything should come off. It shouldn't be too bad. We've got this Mopar 2-inch lift. It comes in a really fancy box. The parts guy said the box was $1,400 and the lift was 100. So it's a really fancy box. Should be a lot of fun. All right. I'm not exactly sure how to go about this.
Like this just pops right there. This is hooked, so this side, I think this side does. See how this is just looped in there? It's just,
Yeah.
I think that side pops, and then it.
Well, they put a little.
Oh, did they? Oh, well, maybe it goes there.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's under a little pressure.
Wow. Huh.
That's hilarious.
That's awesome. Let's see.
There you go.
There we go.
Hold on to it a little.
All joking aside, the way this lift comes packaged is impressive. The printed wood sides could be repurposed into clocks or a little table or something else cool. The box contains all the parts and the instructions, which were actually pretty handy. Doing things in a certain order was important as the installation progressed. All right, so here's all our parts. We've got our 4 coils, our Fox shocks, some control arms, and extended sway bar links. And I think these are probably some, what are those called? Bump stop extenders. I think. I'll have to read the instructions, but there's what's in the fancy box. All right, before we get started, we should measure and see exactly how much lift we get out of this lift.
Awesome.
Just so we know. Let's see. So right now we're at the bottom of the fender, 35, just over 35.5 inches. And back here, we're at 38, almost 38.5 inches. So we'll see what it is after the lift goes in. So the instructions kind of tell us to loosen everything up first, including like the track bar here. I think because we're just going to be moving everything around, it wants us to Mopar wants us to loosen everything so everything moves freely and we're not binding up any bushings. The extra noise there is got a little heater going because otherwise it'd be super cold out here. All right, we got the front track bar loosened, and then we just had to loosen these upper control arm bolts. To do that, you got to take this little heat shield off. Looks like those are 8mm, not 10mm. No, it actually is a 10mm. I just had an 11mm socket on there. So, gonna take off this heat shield, and then let's see, this heat shield over here on the other side. Okay, with that heat shield off, now we can get to this bolt on both sides. It's the same, and loosen up this control arm, and then loosen up the lower control arm on both ends. And that way, we're gonna replace this lower control arm, but we want to loosen this upper control arm so that we're not binding any of the bushings, and since we're changing the position of the axle, so. And it's just the exact same on both sides. You got your upper and lower control arms. So, and then this brake line and ABS wires hooked to this lower control arm. Obviously we'll have to take that off, so but that's not a big deal. All right, both sides now, upper and lower control arm bolts are loose, so that we can move the axle freely without worrying about binding up those bushings. And then next we got to remove the sway bar bushings, because we're going to replace these sway bar bushings with longer ones, not the bushings, the links. So take those off. All right, we got our sway bar links disconnected. Now there's wiring and things like that we got to disconnect. So, and brake lines. So we're going to take this bracket off here, and then loosen all this up here, so their brake lines and our speed sensor wires and everything are all free and aren't going to get pulled in a crazy way when we lower the axle. Alright, so I got this disconnected, and then from the lower control arm, and then this whole group of wire and brake line loosened up. There's I should probably take that off. There's one connector here for your four-wheel drive actuator. Disconnect that, get this wire free. Basically the same on both sides, because we're going to be dropping the axle down. You don't want to be yanking on any wires or anything. All right, so now for the fun part, we got to remove the old shock, and then the coil, and then replace this lower control arm. And I'll probably just do one side at a time, since I'm on the floor here. I've got my floor jack underneath the differential on this side to hold up the axle, because after you take out this shock here, the axle is going to want to drop, and then so it's on the floor jack, so I can control that. There we go. There's the shock out. So now I should be able to lower the axle enough to pull out the coil. Double check as you lower it for wires and stuff being pulled, just to make sure nothing's in trouble. Coil out. Alright, so the new kit comes with new spacers for the bottom, or dampeners, or isolators, whatever you want to call them. Make sure you orient that correctly. You can do it wrong, but we're going to do it right. That goes in there like that. There we go. You just got to make sure it's seated correctly. There's this little guide pin there, you got to get that in right. So that's in there, and then up top there's this. Make sure these two little nubbins are in the holes that they're supposed to be in. This one stays the same.
Technical term, it's a nubbin.
Nubbin. There we go.
I saw the nubbin come up on that side.
That'll probably fall out when I'm trying to put the new coil in. All right, here's the old coil and the new coil going on. It doesn't look a lot bigger. It is a little bit, but it's got, this one's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The new one's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 coils going around, so they're a little bit different. Don't forget to install this little bump stop that goes here inside the coil to shorten the distance between your bump stop and the axle. One more. Two more. Keep going. Okay. Stop. Okay, good. Perfect. Alright, that's not going anywhere. Good deal. So here's the front shock, the old one versus new. The shock body on the new one's quite a bit larger, and the whole thing is quite a bit longer. Yeah, that should be a lot better. It's important to orient it correctly. You see that's a little different than stock. And then this bottom is angled. You want to have this pointing in, so it's oriented like that, and this bottom part in as well, so oriented just like that. It's actually just the way it came out of the package, so not too hard. There we go, just like that.
Jack it up.
Yep, start jacking it up. Keep going. A little bit more. Okay. All right, now we just got to do the same thing on the other side. Here we go. All right, so if you're doing this job, make sure you bolt down this bumper before you put in, before you totally connect the the bottom shock mount, because you have to go through here to get to the nut to tighten this down. So make sure you tighten that bumper down before you connect the bottom of the shock. Next, I'm going to take off these lower control arms and replace those. All right, here's the old control arm compared to the new control arm. They're almost identical. You can see if you line up the holes there, they don't quite line up there. So the new one is maybe a 1/4 inch longer. That's all. But other than that, they look just about the same. All right, the hardest part of this job, apparently for some reason, is getting the lower control arms, getting those holes lined up for the bolts. Extremely difficult. I ran a ratchet strap to a four-wheeler it was just barely enough. What a struggle. I've been struggling with just this passenger side lower control arm now for way too long. Hopefully the other side goes a little easier. That's rough. So interesting, on the passenger side, the axle went toward the back of the vehicle. On the driver's side, the axle went toward the front of the vehicle, but not nearly as much. And that works to my advantage a little bit because this new control arm is longer. So getting this side lined up probably won't be quite as difficult, but still. So yeah, the passenger side shifted, shifted toward the back. The driver's side shifted toward the front, and now I just got to fight with this a little bit. Okay, this one did go a lot easier. I just ran a ratchet strap from the knuckle there to a spot on the frame in the back, and the bolt lined up pretty easily on this side. So yeah, you just need ratchet straps and some extreme patience to get these lower control arms on. Okay, so now I'm just reattaching all my wires, hooking everything back up, getting all these wires and brake lines squared away, so we're good to go. I'm gonna do that on both sides, and then get an initial tightening, and then we'll tighten down completely once it's on the ground. So yeah, no problem. Okay, the last thing to install on the front are the extended sway bar links. You can see that the new one is quite a bit longer than the original. Alright, front sway bar links are on, and I've got all the wires and brake line hooked back up, and everything's mostly tightened. And the same thing on this side. So we'll put the wheels back on the front and move to the back. So the procedure for the back is going to be really similar to the front, where we're going to loosen the bolts for the upper and lower control arms, and we're going to remove this bracket right here so this brake line and ABS wire can come lower. And then I think there's one connection on the differential there we got to undo. So and the track bar. But yeah, so just loosening these control arms, the track bar, and getting our wires so that they can hang. Sway bar link. Alright, that's hanging loose. Alright, so this one actually doesn't have a wire to disconnect going down to the differential because it's not a Rubicon and it doesn't have a locker back here. So the only things to loosen up are these on both sides, the brake line and the ABS wire. Other than that, we just got parking brake cables and a breather hose here, and nothing else. So nice and simple. But if you've got a Rubicon, you've got that locker connector to disconnect. All right, so here's the new shock. You can see the difference.
It's huge.
It's a lot bigger, and so it's going to be a lot better ride. All right, here's our rear springs side by side. New one, old one. You can see the new one has a little bit of a progressive top there, so that squishes down really easy and then flexes out when the axle's hanging down, so the coil doesn't fall out. So, but yeah, a little bit taller than the old one, and a little more progressive. And then this is gonna go on top. All right, so next I got to install these bump stop extenders. It's gonna bring the bump stop closer to the axle, and it just sits down on a plate here and bolts on with 2 bolts. So pretty easy, hopefully.
And both coils are where they're supposed to be?
Yep, ready to jack up. So
all right,
we just got to put the shocks in.
It's got a little oil dripping out. That's good?
Maybe that's good, I don't know.
Oh.
We'll say it's good. Got some extended sway bar links. Maybe a couple inches longer there. All right, everything looks good. So we're just gonna we're gonna tighten up the control arm bolts here, and then final tighten this, and just make sure everything looks good. And then put the wheels on, and that'll be it. The back is a lot easier than the front. All right, well, the lift is on. Let's see how much we gained here. So right now the bottom of the fender is at 39. Oh, we'll show you here. 39 there, and here's at 40 and a half. So we're definitely higher than we were. We're gonna take it for a little drive, see how it feels, make sure I tightened everything, and I'll think I'll measure it again when we get back, just so things kind of settle a little bit. Well, we're going down the road and it feels pretty good. Nothing fell apart yet, the wheels haven't fallen off, so tearing a vehicle apart and then going for a drive, it's always good to not hear any clunking or squeaking or anything like that. So I would call this a success.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right, we went for a ride, so things got to settle. Let's just check it one more time. Right now we're at 39. I think that's the same as it was. And 40. So actually, I think that was a 40 and a half before. So yeah, things just settled a little bit there. No noises or anything on the drive, which is really good. And it felt great. We just took it for a quick spin around kind of the block, the country block. And it felt really good. So it's still got just a slight rake. It's not perfectly leveled. It could be like another ½ inch taller in the front, but yeah, you know, it's a Mopar lift, so they like to have a little bit of rig built in, I think. Overall, not a too difficult job. It did take me quite a while. I've never done a lift on a Gladiator before. I've never actually worked on a Gladiator before because, you know, they're pretty new and I can't imagine why else I would have ever worked on one. But the hardest part of the job was those front lower control arms. Those were a real pain in the butt. Those took me quite a while to figure out how to get those bolts lined up. Using the strap on the four-wheeler worked to pull the axle forward, and then on the frame to pull the axle backwards on the driver's side. But overall, not a terrible job. I think anybody could figure out how to do it on their own if you want to save a few $100 in labor. So, and it's a Mopar lift, which is good because it's covered under warranty, and it's gonna have the correct geometry in the suspension and everything. It's gonna be well designed. And for what Jason and his wife want to do with it, which is daily drive it and take it into the mountains sometimes, I think the 2-inch lift is the perfect way to go. Jason's gonna add some tires next week. Probably 33s. So
maybe 35s.
Maybe, we'll see. So he'll throw some bigger tires on there, and probably some like Goodyear Duratrax most likely, which are a good tire. So the 2-inch lift with the Duratrax, that's a great setup for something you want to daily drive and take into the mountains on the weekends. Definitely can't go wrong with that setup. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. If you did, give me a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe so I can take you on a new adventure, show you new content every Monday and Thursday, and we'll see you next time.